The screen not visible, sir.
Others, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
rejoin. The person who is not able to see the screen, rejoin again. Right. When to create the measures? Let me write here. Whenever we need to perform aggregate calculations, whenever we need to perform aggregate calculations, come on, percentages, whenever we need to perform or calculate, whenever we need to calculate aggregate calculations, whenever we need to calculate aggregate calculations, percentages, we need to create measure. We need to create a measure, guys. Right. Whenever we need to calculate aggregate calculations or percentages, we need to create the measure. Fine. Okay, we understand when to create the measure. And in simple terms, I can tell like this. In simple terms, for every row, when we need a value, we need to create a column. When to create a column? For every row, when you need a value or when you need a calculation, we need to create a column for every row. So measure means for group of rows. For group of rows, if you need one value, we'll create a measure. Let me open Power BI Desktop. So keep in mind simple. So in interview, when they ask when to create the measure, you give this answer. Whenever we need to calculate aggregate calculations or percentages, we'll go and create the measure. Or else, once after telling this, tell them that from group of rows, if you need one value, from group of rows, when you need one value, we'll create a measure. Column for every row. Column for every row when you need a value, for every row here, we'll create a measure. Let me close this. I'll load some tables now. Click on Excel. I'll load some tables from EMP DEPT. One second. Someone is telling the time. He's not able to hear. What I can do? Fine. Let me select EMP table, DEPT table, and managers table. Click on load. And let me even load orders table also. Click on Excel, sample superstore, click on open. Load. Fine. So yesterday we seen it. When I want to show, in a report I want to show employee name. In a report I need to show employee name, salary, commission, and along with this I want to show total salary. When you want to show total salary, what we did? We went to data view and we went to table where we need to create the new information. We created new column. Why we created the new column? Why we need to create the new column is for each row I need one values. Calculate values for each row. So for each row when I want to calculate the values, I click on new column, guys, here. I'll give the column name here, total salary. Salary plus commission. Fine. Now, when to create the measure is, look at this here. This time what I need to show is, there is a salary column. I want to show what is the total salary we received. We paid. There are 15 employees in our company. For 15 employees together, what is the total salary we paid? I want to show sum of salary here. So do you have any column here where it is having sum of salary? So you can drag this total salary. You are done with this visual. This time I want to show sum of salary, guys. To show sum of salary, do you have any column? Any column in the EMP table directly means no. I want to sum. So that means now what I need to do is for group of rows, I need one value. For group of rows, I need one value. Let me show here. When you need for group of rows one value, you can create a measure. Go to the data view again, select the table where you want to create the measure, and this time measures can be created using new measure or quick measure. About quick measure we'll discuss in later part. Now let me click on new measure. I want to create a measure here. I can give the measure name as sum of salary. I can give any name and I can go and write the formula. After equal to, we just need to write the formula for measure. I want to sum all the values in the salary column. In the DAX, to sum all the values, there is a function called sum function. Look at this. To the sum function, you want to pass one column, it will add the numbers in that column. I want to pass which column here? Salary column. Just close this, press enter. A measure will be created in the table. And now you can go and take one visual, card visual, and you can go and drag this measure, guys. Sum of salary measure. Look at this. The total salary I'm paying is $39K dollars. When you sum all these values, it will come to 39K. And one thing you observe here, for a column, when you create a column, it is showing something like this, a table symbol like this, When you create a measure, it is showing something like this, a calculator kind of symbol. Keep in mind. So happen. Just 1 second, guys. How you will differentiate which one is column and which one is measure is when you see a table kind of symbol here. When you see a table kind of symbol here, those are columns, guys. This symbol will state us it's a column. This symbol will state us it's a measure. It's a measure. Keep in mind. Calculator kind of symbol will state a measure. Fine. So to get this 39K, why you need to write a formula and why you need to show it? You written a formula called sum of salary. Why you need to do it? Without that you can even get it, right? I can take one card visual, and in the card visual I can just go and drag the salary column. I can even get this value. So you see, I written one formula. When I drag this, it is showing it. Even when I directly drag the salary column, it is showing it. So by default, when you drag any numeric column, Power BI also will do what? Sum. By default, when you drag any column, Power BI also will show sum, guys. Let me explain what is the difference. Types of measures. There are two types of measures, guys. Types of measures. How many types of measures we have is two types. Two types. One is implicit measure. Implicit measure. Second one is explicit measure. Explicit measure. So there are two types of measures, implicit measure and explicit measure. Let me explain what is implicit measure and what is explicit measure. So without writing the formula, when you are showing the measure value, we call it as implicit measure, guys. Look at this here. To show the sum of salary, my client is expecting to see sum of salaries. For that, I don't even want to write the formula. I can just go here. I can drag the salary column. By default, it will do sum. We'll get it. I'm writing any formula here. So I'm not writing any formula. I just drag this column. Microsoft itself, it is doing sum. It is giving the sum of salaries. Without writing the formula, when you are creating a measure value, we call it as implicit measure, guys. Without writing the formula, if we are creating a measure, we call as implicit measure. That measure we call it as implicit measure, guys. Look at this here. In this, both are measures only. I'm showing aggregate results here and here. Both are measures. Both are measures. But here I am not writing the formula. Here I am writing the formula. Without writing the formula, when you show it, it is an implicit measure. Here I'm writing some formula. I'm writing some formula. Let me write here. By writing the formula, if we are showing, by writing the formula, if we are creating a measure, we call as, by writing the formula, if we are creating a measure, we call as explicit measure, guys. Explicit measure. This one comes under explicit measure. So I recommend, rather than going with implicit measures, write explicitly. Performance is same. Whether it is implicit measure, whether it is explicit measure, in the back end, the operation they are going to do is same, guys. They will sum. In the back end, the operation they are going to do is same. Performance is same. But the recommended is go and create explicit measure. So there are something where you can receive implicitly. Look at this here. Sum, count, average, minimum, maximum. If you want to show, you can show it. Let's assume I want to show count of customers we have. In the orders table, I have a count of orders. In the orders table, I want to count how many orders I have. To count the orders, you can easily get it. Just go and drag order ID column from the orders table. Go and drag order ID column and change that to count, guys. Then go and change it to count. When I click on count, it will show count of orders we have 9,994. So even though you have an option to get measures using these options, recommended is go and create explicit measures only. Why? Because, let me explain. Once you create the data set, once you create a data set in the Power Pivot, see, we'll load the tables. What happens? We'll load the tables into Power Pivot and we'll do the data modeling and we'll create new information here like measures, all them. So when it is an implicit measure, only in Power BI that measure will work. So Power BI have intelligence, Power View have intelligence. When you drag the salary, it will do sum of salary. Sum of salary. So we'll prepare one data set, right? From the data set, when you drag the salary column, number column, Power BI will do sum of salary. Sometimes we will use this data set in other softwares also. We'll connect to this data set from Excel and we can do the analysis, guys. So we have an option. If you see here, once you prepare a data set, we'll move the data set to Power BI service. User 38. Once you prepare a data set, we'll move the data set to the project workspace. Once we move the data set to the project workspace, any workspace here, that data set, we can connect to the data set from Excel, we can even analyze. So there is an option called analyze in Excel. The meaning is we can connect to this data set from Excel and we can perform the analysis. We can perform the analysis, guys. We can connect to this data set from Excel and we can perform the analysis. So in Excel, when you drag the salary column directly, it will not show. It will not show. So here in Power BI, when I drag the salary column directly, it will do some perfect. The same model, when you build it, when you publish this model to Power BI service, you can see the data set there. You'll see the data set there. When you have the data set there, so you can even connect to this data set from Power BI. So from Excel, when you connect from Excel, in the Excel, when you drag the salary column, it will not do sum of salary automatically, right? That is the reason. So if you create a measure, and if you publish that, if you create a measure in the table, and if you save that model, and if you publish it, and when you connect to it from the Excel, we can use that measure. I'll show you. Keep in mind. So best practice is, whenever you need to show aggregated results, rather than going with implicit measures like this, go and create an explicit measures. So that even when you connect to the data set from other softwares are comfortable to show the values. When it is implicit measure, so only on Power BI it might work. Fine, guys. So on the whole, there are two types of measures. We understand what each one is. Without writing the formula, it is implicit measure. By writing the formula, it is explicit measure. The output they are going to give is same. The time they are going to take is same. Only difference is, so when you create an explicit measure, you can use that measure in any software. When you connect here, I can even connect to this data set from Excel. Even in the Excel, I can use it. Even in the Power BI, I can use it. But when it is an implicit measure, it might work only on Power BI. So recommended, guys. Recommended is just create explicit measures. Whenever you need to show any aggregate results, just go and create explicit measures. So if you know that I don't use this data set in other software like Excel, I'll use it in only Power BI. You can even go with implicit measure, no problem. You can just drag it and you can show it up. Fine, guys. We understand about what is implicit measure and explicit measure here. Now we'll see the difference between columns and measures. We'll see the difference between columns and measures. So there are a lot of implicit measures you have, guys. Look at this. I want to show region-wise sales. The total sales we have is 2.3 million. I want to show each region how much sales you are getting. To show each region how much sales you are getting, I can take one visual. I can drag the region. I can drag the sales. If I want to show the percentage of sales here, you don't need to write the formula. With implicit measure itself, you can get it. Each region, how much percentage you are getting, you can show it easily. How can you show it? Just go and drag the sales column again and click on this expand button, show value as percentage of grand total. It will show percentage of sales. South region is contributing least percentage and West region is contributing highest percentage. In Power BI, so this is also, am I writing any formula to get this percentage of sales? To get this percentage of sales here, I'm writing any formula? No, I'm just dragging it. I'm going here, show value as percentage of grand total. This kind of measures, we call it as implicit measures without writing the formula. This can be worked only in Power BI. When you publish this model to Power BI service, when you try to connect from the Excel, can you use this one? Means no, you cannot. So that is the reason, just percentage sales, create your formula. So I'll write, so percentages, when you want to get percentages, what you need to create? A measure. Select this, go and click on new measure. What is the measure name? Percentage of sales. And I want to write the formula. I'll write one formula for this measure. You guys will not understand that formula. For sure, you will understand about this formula in the coming classes. I want sum of sales divided by all sales. Calculate. I want all the sales. Calculate sum of sales for all the regions. Just close this. You need to multiply this with 100. The best way to do that is drag the percentage sales, select the percentage, go to the measure tools and click on percentage, guys. Click on percentage here. It will multiply with 100. See here, this one without writing the formula I'm showing, we call it as implicit measure. This one by writing the formula I'm showing explicit measure. So always recommended is just go and write explicit measure. Fine. Now let me explain. So we understand whenever we need to show aggregated results like this, we created a measure. Whenever we need to show percentages like this, we created a measure. Now we'll go and see important one, difference between columns and measures. Columns and measures. Important, try to understand. Here, you'll get a lot of questions. You'll get a lot of questions here. Let me show you. What is the difference between columns and measures? I'll show you here. So for explaining that, I'll open one Word document where I have the points. By seeing the points, I'll explain it. Fine. Right. What is the difference between, sometimes columns we call it as calculated columns. So you created columns here, right? We even call that columns as calculated columns. The total salary you have, right? People will call it as calculated columns also. What is the difference between columns or calculated columns and measures? Measures. So first point is when to create them. For each row, when you need value, columns. For group of rows, when you need one value, measures. Instead of telling this, you can even tell this. To calculate aggregates and percentages, we need to go and create measure. So first point, we are aware of it. Let's go to the second point now. Now, when you create a column, how the values will be calculated? The second point is, when you create a column, how the values will be calculated? This is important. Values are calculated based on the information from each row of the table. When you create a column, values are calculated based on each row. Based on each row. So let me write here. Just 1 second, guys. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Fine. Now we are going to understand. Second one is how the values will be calculated. When you create a column, the column values will calculate based on each row of the table. We are aware of it. So when you calculate any column, when you write any formula for the column, that formula will execute row by row. So it will take first row first. For the first row, this formula will execute. For the first row, salary is this, it will go here. Commission is this, it will go here. 2450. For the second row, also it will take this, it will execute this formula. For third row, it will execute. So when you create any new column, the new column will execute row by row. When the new column is executing row by row, we call it as what? When the new column is executed row by row, we call it as row context case. So we call this as row context. They will ask one important question in the interview: what is row context and what is filter context? So when you create a column, it will execute the values, it will execute the formula row by row. When you execute the formula row by row, we call it as row context case. So measure. When we create any measure, values are calculated based on information from the filter in the report or based on the fields used in the visualization. You want to understand this point, guys. So this is simple. You can easily understand what is row context. When you create a column, it will calculate the values row by row. We call it as row context. So now we are telling it is filter context. When you create a measure, how the measure values will calculate. Let me explain, guys. So how the measure values will calculate is, when you create any formula for the measure, I written sum of salary here. So when you write one formula, people will think that this formula will hold a value 39k. And when I use that, measure, you might think that it is showing 39k here. So when I use that measure here, you might think that it is showing 39k. Simple, guys. So I created one measure on the salary column, and the measure name is sum of salary. And people will think that this measure, what I created, will store this value. It will run this formula and it will sum all these values, and the 39k will store in this. And when I use this in the visuals, you might think that it is showing 39k. It is completely wrong, guys. It is completely wrong. I'll explain one more time, just listen carefully. When I create a measure, when I write some formula, when I press enter, people will think that this formula will execute and it will get sum of salary and it will hold here. And when I use that measure, you might think that it will show that 39k there. It is not. It is not the way it will perform. When you create a measure, the measure will just store the formula. When you create any measure here, and whatever the formula you are writing here, only that it will store in the measure. So when this measure will execute is, when you drag the measure on top of the visual, when you drop it on the top of the visual, that time it will execute, guys. Measure will execute at the runtime. It will not a pre-calculated value. It will execute at the runtime. Look at this here. I'm taking one CAD visual, and there is one measure. So for now, in this measure, we'll have what? Only formula. Nothing will be there. When you drag and drop on the visual, when you drop it here, that time it will execute, and it will show the value. So when I drag it here, it is showing 39k. 39k. So at the time of dropping, it will execute, guys. The same measure I'll use with the dimension column called job. Look at this. I have job column, right? I'll drag job wise the measure. Look at this, what value it will show. The same measure, this time I'm using with job. I'm taking one table visual here. Let me drag first job column. Just drag the job column. And look at this, what are the different jobs you have? Is 6 different jobs you have. It is showing. When I go and drag the measure here, look at this, what values it will give. Will it give 39k? It will not give 39k. Look at this. So if this measure is holding 39k, when you even drag it here, it needs to show 39k everywhere. So it will not store. So when you drag it independently, it will give the complete sum of salaries. When you drag it with job, it will give each job wise sum of salaries. Each job wise sum of salaries. What it will do is, in the EMP table, it will filter the data analyst first. For the analyst, what is the sum of salary it will give? Look at this. In the EMP table, job analyst, how many analysts are there? 2 analysts are there. For the 2 analysts, it will do sum of salary. For the 2 analysts, what is the sum of salary? 6,000. 6,000. What is the sum of salary? 6,000, guys. Right? Perfect. Same way, it will even filter each job. So look at this. Salesman, it is telling 5,600. It will even do this. It will filter this table based on job. This time what? Salesman. For the salesman, how many employees are there? 4 employees. 1,600 plus 1,500. 3,100. 3,100 plus 25. 25. How much? 5,600. Right? That is what you are showing here. Salesman, 5,600 is the sum of salary. So it will filter the each job and it will show the value. And same way, this time what I'll do is, I'll drag department wise. I'll take another card visual. In the another table visual. In the another table visual, I'll drag department number this time. Department number wise, I'll drag this measure. Look at this. The same measure we are using in different places. When I use this same measure, it is giving a different value. When I use this measure here, it is giving a different value. When I use this measure here, it is giving a different value. What it will do now, this measure will filter the department number 10, and for the department number 10, it will give the sum of salary. Look at this. When I go here, it will filter department number 10. For the department number 10, what is the sum of salary? 1300 plus 5000, 6300. 6300 plus 2470, 8750. The sum is 8750 for 10th department employees. When you go here, that is what it is showing. So that is what we are trying to tell. The measure value will calculate based on filter context. The measure value will calculate based on filter context here. It will filter the value and it will give the value, right? So not only that, so the measure value will change when you change the filter condition, guys. Look at this. I have a slicer here. Slicer is for what purposes? For filtering the data. There is a one visual with the name slicer. The slicer visual is for filtering the data. When I drag the job here, I'll go and drag the job column to the slicer. So when I drag the job column here, look at this. When I drag the job column here, so you are seeing all the jobs. Slicer, you can select one value and it will filter the data here. I want to see only salesmen's here. Click on salesmen's. You can see only the employees who are salesmen's. And here the value is changing. Previously, the measure value is showing 39K. But as soon as I select the filter value in the slicer, it is showing 56K. That means previously it showed for all the jobs, the sum of salary is 39K. Now it is showing only for salesman, the sum of salary is 5,600. For analyst, it is 6,000. For trainer, it is 10,000. So measure value will calculate based on filter also. When you select any filter value based on the filter, the measure value will change. Not only that, when you use the measure with any dimension column, at the dimension value level, it will filter the data and it will show that. That is the point I mentioned here. Values are calculated based on the information from any filter in the report. So measure values are calculated based on any filter in the report. Slicer is also for filtering the data. When you try to filter the data, the measure value will change. President 5,000, it will change. And not only that, or the fields used in the visualization, the measure value will calculate based on any filter in the report or the fields used in the visualization. Even the measure values will calculated based on the fields you used here. So if you use job, it will give the measure value based on department number. If you use job, it will give the data based on job. Tell me guys, when I go and add here in this visual, I will go and add job, department wise, job wise. So in between department number and in between job, in between sum of salary, I'll add job column here. Will the value will change or will it remain same? I'll go and add the job here. When you add the job in between, you'll get department one and job. The values will change or will it show same? Someone tell me.
Change.
It will change. Yes, it will change. So let me drag the job here. It will change. Perfectly, it will change. What it will do this time? It will do sum of salary this time based on department wise, job wise. So look at this in 10th department, clerks. How many clerks are there? Their sum of salary it will give. Let's go here. In the department number 10, I have how many clerks? Only one clerks. It will apply both the filters now. And what is the sum of salary for them? 1300 is the sum of salary. That is what it is showing here. That is what it is showing here. Right? So in each department, each job, what is the sum of salary it will show, guys? Let me go and clear this filter. Fine. That is what filter context. The measure will always work on filter context. You need to tell that. So what is row context and filter context means? When you create a new column, it will work on row context. The meaning is it will calculate the values row by row. You need to tell. And what is filter context means? When you create a measure, it will work on filter context. So it will always calculate values based on the filter you selected in the report or based on the dimension columns we have in the report, guys. Perfect. The next point is it will append the static values. When you create a columns, it will append the static values to each row in the table. So when I create any column, what it is doing, it is adding a new column to your table. It is showing some values there. So it will add, physically it will add, when you create any new column, physically it will add one column to the table. Previously I have 8 columns. Now it got added the 9th column. Physically it will add, and it will populate with the data. To the table, when you add the column, when you populate with the data, my power pivot size will increase or decrease. 100% it will increase. How many new columns you are creating? Based on that, the size of the power pivot will increase. So that is what I mentioned here. Appending static values to each row in the table and stores them in the model, which will increase the file size or which will increase the power pivot size. Power pivot size. So when you create a measure, do you think the power pivot size will increase? Someone tell me, guys. When you create a measure, do you think the power pivot size will increase? Means no.
No.
Measure will hold what? Measure will hold only the formula.
Just the formula.
Right. To store the formula, it doesn't take any space. It doesn't take any space. Right. So that is what we write in here. Does not create new data in the table, which does not increase the file size. When you create a measure, it does not create any new data in the table, which does not increase the file size. Fine. Next, we'll go and understand the 4th point. When it will recalculate again, the measure value, when it will recalculate again, the measure value will recalculate on data source refresh. So there is some new employees joined in our company. Now currently 15 employees are there. There is some new employees joined in the company. I entered that in the EMP table. In the Excel, I entered that. If you want to get that new data here, you need to click on what? Refresh. When you click on refresh, you'll get it. What Power BI will do, you know, when I click on refresh? So in the Power Pivot, you have EMP table, right? As soon as you click on refresh, this will delete the complete data in the EMP table. It will reload the complete data from the source. Every time when you click on refresh, it will truncate the data in the EMP table, or not only EMP table, all these tables. It will reload the data from the source. It will reload the data from the source, truncate and reload. When the new column value will recalculate is, when you click on refresh, it will truncate and reload the data in the Power Pivot. When it truncate and reload, it will load only 8 columns. And this column again, it will calculate. Every time when you refresh, the new column values will recalculate. How many new columns you created? So when you refresh, it will truncate the data in this table, EMP table, 8 columns. It will reload the fresh data from the source. As soon as it reload the fresh data, it need to create additional calculated columns. Right. That is one point. It will calculate when you refresh the data source, or when changes are made to the component columns which are used to derive columns. Look at this. I'll derive one column here. So I'll derive one column here. That column is total salary into 1000. I'll derive one dummy column here. Click on new column. Click on new column. The column is the total salary which I received. So I'll go here. Some dummy column I deriving. Just to explain this, I'm creating one dummy column. In the dummy column, I'll use total salary column which I derived and multiply by 10. Multiply by 10. So now, if you look at this here, it is giving the value 2450. It is doing multiplication of this and it is giving this. So when the value will recalculate again, one time when it will recalculate again is when you click on refresh. When you click on refresh, it will bring the data for 8 columns. This calculated columns, it will recalculate again. Based on this column, it will recalculate again. Not only that, when you make any changes to this, I'm using this column in this column. When this value will recalculate again is, let me go and make some changes here. How can I make the changes is, instead of EMP salary and commission, I'm just keeping salary here this time. Or else I'm just keeping commission here this time. I'm removing the salary here. So that means this column will change. When I press enter, this column value will change. As soon as it change, will it change this or not? Yes, it will change. Look at this. Look at this. As soon as this was changing, it will change, guys. So when you click on refresh, the new column values will calculate. Not only that, when this calculated column will recalculate again is when you make any changes to the source columns. So in the salary column and commission column, if there is any changes, the total salary column will recalculate again. When in the total salary, when there is any changes, this dummy column will recalculate again. Look at this. When I go and write salary here, salary plus commission, tell me guys, will it recalculate or not? When I press enter, will it recalculate or not? Yes, it is recalculating. It is recalculating, right? So new column will recalculate when you refresh the data or when changes made to the component columns. Component columns means source columns, which are used to derive the calculated columns. To derive the new columns, we use some source columns. When there is any changes in the source columns, it will recalculate. When the measure will recalculate? Measure will recalculate in response to any changes in the filter. When you make any changes in the filter, the measure will recalculate. Look at this. For the first time, when you are dragging the measure, it will give one value. So first time when I'm dragging the measure here, it will give the value. And when it will recalculate again, first time when you drag it, it will calculate. When it will recalculate again. So when you make any changes on the filter, I'm taking a slicer visual, I'm dragging the department number column here. I'll show it in the form of list, or else let's take job only. Just let's take job only. So take one slicer, let's drag the job here, and go and click on any job. So the measure value, as soon as I select any filter here, it is recalculating. So it is giving sum of salary this time for analyst. When you make any changes to the filter, the measure value will recalculate. Not only that, guys. So I have a visual here. In this visual, I have department wise. So let me clear this filter. In this visual, I have department wise sum of salary. So when you drag sum of salary now, it will calculate each department wise what is the sum of salary. It will calculate each department wise what is the sum of salary. Now, when this measure value will change again, when you go and add any new column here, department, when I go and add job in between, will it recalculate or not? 100%. When you add the new dimension column to the visual, the measure value is recalculating. Or when you remove the dimension column from the visual, the measure value will recalculate. Look at this. It is giving 10th department sum of salary. When I go and add job, it will give 10th department clerk what is the sum of salary. That is what we written here. The measure values will recalculate in changes to any filters with the report, or when we add or remove the another dimension column to the visual, the measure value will recalculate. Fine. The last point is new column name should be unique at the table level, guys. So when you create any new column here, when I give some name, it should be unique. When I try to create another new column with the same name, will it allow? Means no. So in the same EMP table, I'll try to create another column, new column, and I'll try to give the same name called total salary. Total salary. And let me write here something dummy formula, salary. So when I press enter, it will not allow. It is telling that the name total salary is already used for a column on this table EMP. Choose a different name. If you use one name for one column already, you are not supposed to use the same name for another column. It will not work. Even you cannot go and use the existing column names also. Let me go and try job. I'm giving the column name as job, guys, here. Will it even work? Look at this. It will not even work. Why? Because there is a column with the name job already. So what happens is when you have the same column name, you cannot give the same name here. Even when you create any calculated column, when you give some name here, like total salary, you're not supposed to give the same name. When you give the same name, it will not work. So now when I press enter, it will ask me to change the name. What you can do, you can add one, or you can change the name. When you add that, it will execute now. It will execute now. The new column name should be unique at the table level. In each table, when you give one column name, it should be same. The same way, the measure name should be unique throughout the model. So it is only table level. Column should be unique at the table level only. So measure should be unique throughout the model. Model means collection of tables, we call it as model. All this together we call it as Power Pivot model. All these 4 tables together we call it as Power Pivot model. So look at this. I created one measure in the EMP table, sum of salary. Can I go and use the same name in another table? Now, new column, see, understand here one point. When I try to give the total salary in the EMP table, it will not work. Now I'll go to the DEPT table. I'll click on new column. I'll give the column name as total salary. Someone tell me, will it work here or not? Will it work here or not?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it will work. Why? Because the column name should be unique only at the table level. If you use this name in the table, you cannot use same name in the table, but you can use it in another table. Look at this, the total salary column, it is there here as well as it is there here. So it should be unique only in the table. It doesn't bother about other tables. But when it comes to measure, the measure name should be unique throughout the model. Let's assume in the EMP table, I created one measure with the name sum of salary. Now I will go to the DEPT table. I'll try to create one measure here with the name sum of salary here. Sum of salary. I'm creating the measure in a different table and I'm giving some dummy value to that measure. Now tell me guys, when I press enter, will it create a measure here in the DEPT table? Will it create or not?
No.
No. When I press enter, it will not create. So it will tell that the name sum of salary is already used in a measure on the EMP table. Choose a different name. Throughout all the tables, if you use one name for one measure, it is not possible to use the same name for another measure in any table. You want to go and give another one. Sum of salary measure 2, I'll give it. When I add it, will it work? 100% it will work. This name is not used in anywhere. You can create a measure here. The last point is measure name should be unique throughout the model. These are the difference between columns and measures, guys. Columns and measures. The next thing we need to discuss about is DAX operators. So we are done with understanding about basics of DAX, guys. In the last 2 hours, we completely discussed some basics of DAX. Now, so from now, what you need to learn from the DAX is you need to learn about DAX operators and you need to learn about DAX functions. DAX functions. So what are the different DAX operators we have? So how to use them, when to use them? What are the different DAX functions we have? How to use them, when to use them? We need to start discussing it, guys. Anybody have any questions? What we discussed so far?
Unmuted.
Yes, yes, we can do that. So measure, see, when it is a new column, so by default, you can take the columns from only one table. When you create a new column, I can take the columns from only this table. Even from the other table, you can take it. No problem. How to take it, we'll discuss. So when you are creating a measure, you can create the measure using two to three tables at a time. Measure can allow take the columns from different tables. It will work. We will even see that. So both columns we can write it. So let's assume there is one increment table here. Let's go to the here. Let me create one increment table. So enter data, department number and 10. We can create it. Department number and increment. So increment, department number is 10. Increment is 0.1. Department number 20. 0.1 means 10%. Okay, 0.2, something like this. So department number 3, 30. I have some other value, 0.3, something like this. So I'm creating one dummy table. I'm loading it here. I can even create the columns by taking the columns from other table. I want to get here revised salary by incrementing. There is a table, increment table, where I have it. I can create it. Even you can create columns. You can even create measures. When I click on new column, all this we'll discuss. When I create a new column here, revised salary, what I need is I need to take current salary. Whatever the salary we have currently, I need to take the current salary plus I need to multiply with this increment, guys. You need to use a function called, so before that you need to go and establish the relationship between, for now you need to go and establish the relationship between this, yes, you got it already. So I don't want between these two. I want between EMP table and DEPT table. You want to link this. There is department number here. There is department number here. I'll go and link these two tables. Just go and where is department number here? Link these two columns. Once you link this, I can go and write the formula here. So there is a function with the name related. This related function can use the columns from another table. I want to use the columns from the table which I created. So I want to use increment. So and multiply with the current salary. So this will give the revised salary for. Look at this. So the current salary is 2450. When you increment by 10%, it is 2650. So for 20th department, 3000 is current salary. When you increment by 20%, it is 3060. I'm using column which is there in the increment column is which is there in the another table. You can use columns or measures. Both you can use it. We'll write all these formulas in the going forward classes. No, wait. So others, anybody have any questions on this class? Fine, important class, guys. Today's class is important. Please go through it. Please go through it. I don't think I written much notes here. Let me copy this. So I already shared this material, Power Pivot material. In the Power Pivot material, you can find these differences. Go through there. Let me add one text box here. Insert. Save. Today I'll give it as DAX introduction class 2. DAX introduction class 2. Let me publish it. No class tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Next class is 7 AM May 2021 Power BI files. Next class is on Monday, guys. We'll discuss from here in Monday's class. Yes, now go ahead. What is your question? You people can leave. So Uday or someone is having some questions, guys. Please go ahead. Are you there? Yes. What you mean to say is you want to select here. When I select 10 here, it need to multiply by 10. When I select 20 here, it need to multiply this result by 20. When you select 30 here, it need to multiply this. Huh? You can multiply it. Just multiply it. When you go here in the first measure, you multiply this. So already this is there. You want 10% hike. So plus. No, visual level, no. See, one thing. If you want to multiply this one with some other value, you can keep some. There is one option here. So a parameter or something. We have some value here. New parameter. So here you can pass one value. So when you add a new parameter, it will add one parameter to your report. There you can select whether you want to increment 10 or 20 or 30. When you change the 10, it will multiply with 10. When you change it to 20, it will multiply with 20. In that way, you can make the change, but not directly in the visual level. We'll see. I'll stop here for today.